SBI has recently been diligently reworking all of the magic weapon lines, giving them a fresh update. One of the things that they have done is change nature and holy stabs, allowing them to kill mobs easier and therefore fame farm better than before. But they went a little too far, especially with the nature stabs, as now nature is an extremely strong weapon for killing mobs. So much so that the one-handed nature has become the best weapon for clearing solo dungeons. Looking at the build now in specific, obviously for our weapon, as I just mentioned, it is the one-handed nature staff, and for our offhand, Crypt Candle is probably the fastest clearing weapon, but if you want something a little bit easier to clear with or cheaper to clear with, really anything with good damage or cooldown can be effective. One thing to note for offhands is you can use the normal torch if you want. It gives attack speed and cooldown reduction. The attack speed isn't as helpful as you would think it would be, as you actually don't auto attack all that much during the normal clear, but it is very good for the bosses, so normal torch can be a good option. For helmet, we're going to go Cultist Cowl, although really any damage helmet can work. Some other good options include things like the Stalker Hood, which is just a solo dungeon classic, and the Cowl of Purity. For our chest piece, we're going to be going with the Druid Robe, as it really is the fastest because every cast of your Q ability, as you get 3 every time, each count for 1 stack of the Druid Robe, so you can stack it up very fast and get that Druid Robe ramping up in damage very quickly. If you want another option, you can also go with the Cultist Robe, as it has a little bit more base damage on it. For shoes, we're just going to be going with the standard solo dungeon shoes, which is any leather shoes, and using the refreshing sprint ability. For food, you want any health regeneration food, as despite using healing stuff, you actually don't have that much healing, so you still do want that out of combat regen. The best for this is the Avalonian beef stew, as it gets you damage and regen, but it is a little bit expensive, so if you want a budget option that just gives you the regen, you can go for any sort of soup or fish. For potions, they're not super highly used in solo dungeons. You can go invisibility potions for a little bit more safety, or poison potions for speeding up your clear just a little bit, for example on bosses. Looking at our abilities, on our nature staff, we're going to be going the Thorns on the Q, as it's the damage option. This is really where most of your clear comes from. On your W, you're going to go the Bramble Seed, again more damage, and then for your passive, go for the Energetic passive, as it helps you sustain your energy throughout the dungeon. On our Cultist Cowl, it's Inner Corruption with the Aggression passive. Similarly, the Druid Robe is Obsessive Burst with, again, the Aggression passive, and then lastly, Refreshing Sprint on your boots with the Balanced Mind passive. So there's really 2 things you want to do and get used to doing as you clear solo dungeons with this nature build. The first is to get used to clearing while running through the dungeon. So for a lot of other weapons, you come up to a group of mobs, stop, use all your abilities on them to kill them, and then move on to the next group. However, with the nature staff, similar to if you're using something like a fire staff, you use ground targeted damage for pretty much all of the clear. All your Q, W, and E are all ground targeted damage, and so you can use them sort of on the ground where mobs are and where mobs are going to go as you move through the dungeon. You don't have to stop at a group, use your abilities on them, and then keep going. You can use an ability and keep going already, and it will sort of die as you're walking. Really, it's about getting good at knowing how much damage you're going to have to put into each mob for it to die, so you don't waste too much time sitting around and over damaging it when you could have just been moving on already. The second thing you want to be doing is to be pulling as many mobs as possible. So since pretty much all of your damage is AoE besides like the auto attack damage that you have, you want to pull pretty much all of the mobs in every room instead of just the first couple that you see. Pull the first couple and then move on and pull the second couple and the third couple as well, and then kill them all together. Now, since your auto attacks will do bonus damage to mobs that have thorns on them, choose the mobs that are the tankiest. So usually there's different tankiness of mobs in the pulls. Look at the most tanky one and then auto attack that one while you're AoEing down everything else. Now, just a note on sort of the build and playstyle here, the E ability on the one-handed nature isn't actually that great of a clearing spell. It doesn't do that much damage, and it requires you to get 3 thorn stacks on your target first, so other nature staffs are actually just about as good at clearing as the one-handed nature, really the power in the nature staff clear comes in the Q and W. The one-handed nature is a little bit faster because the E does do a little bit of damage, but not that much faster than the other nature staffs. So if you really don't like the one-handed nature and can't see yourself using it outside of solo dungeons and want something just a little bit slower, but you still want to go within the nature tree, you can really use any of the other nature staffs and you'll still have a pretty fast clear. You can use the exact same build, the exact same playstyle, and it'll pretty much be the same, just a little bit slower without that little bit of extra E damage. Now before we end this video, I really do need to put in a quick disclaimer about this, as there technically is no one fastest solo dungeon clearing build. Efficient clearing of solo dungeons and doing them really fast comes down to benchmarks, which is all about what IP you have, what tier the dungeon is, even what faction of dungeon mobs it is, all plays a factor in which build is going to clear that dungeon the fastest. So there is no one fastest build. If you take a different dungeon and different IP, there's probably something that would clear it faster than this one-handed nature build. That being said, this one-handed nature build is never going to be bad and will always be one of the best no matter what dungeon and what IP. And I can say, because this is where I tested it, it is the fastest for tier 8 solo dungeon maps, doing it in around 1200 to 1300 IP, then it will be faster than the previous fastest, which was the light crossbow, and other fast clearing weapons and builds like the one-handed spear. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.